Today on Virginia Legends podcast, I have UVA girls soccer coach Steve Swanson. Steve has been at UVA for, I think this is his 23rd year. He just finished. They just got to the final 8 in the game, the NCAA tournament, and got to the final of the ACCs once again. Just an incredible record. Coach, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Julian. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Happy
Hanukkah.
You
too. Yeah, all that.
For everybody.
Kwanzaa and Festivus and everything we celebrate. Well, Coach, the first thing it comes to mind, and we just finished playing the World Cup in the winter, I guess late fall for the first time, and the men's team, they played well, but they didn't get far in the knockout round, and you have a lot of experience with international soccer, might as well give the broad sketches of your career because it's vast. But you've won the under-20 girls World Cup as a coach. You've been on the coaching staff of two of the women's World Cup teams that won the World Cup with Coach Ellis. You've been at UVA for, like I said, 23 years. Before that, you were at Dartmouth and also Stanford. You were National Coach of the Year, I believe, in 2013. You've been to the final of the NCAA, and you've been to the semifinals at least 3 times in the last 10 years. Just an unbelievable record. But to get back quickly to the international game,
it just means I'm old, Julian.
Yeah, you're a legend. Put it that way. But that's an incredible record. But definitely one of the most important figures in American soccer. But again, our men didn't get far in knockout, even though we had our great moments. Our women's team, and you've seen it firsthand, we won 2 World Cups, the last 2 World Cups. Our women have always been strong. And a lot of those women and coaches came out of Northern Virginia and Virginia, where because we were always been strong locally in soccer. But America was always far and ahead of the rest of the world in soccer, because a lot of countries don't allow their little girls to play soccer. It's not ladylike, but the world is catching up. When you look at the relative success of women and men, is it too easy to dismiss the success of just the fact that our women started the game earlier and we have so many great coaches and stuff here? Or do you think there's more to it in terms of culture or other things that have put our men behind, even though we are getting better?
I think, thanks for having me, Julian. It's a good question. I think that the relative success of the women's national team it has a direct relationship, I think, to the resources that were put into place at a much earlier time than other countries. But that's not all that is. I think certainly in the last 10 years, things have changed, and FIFA finally has offered women's World Cups at the under-20, under-17 age groups, and that's stimulated, I think, more resources to go to the women's game throughout the world. And I think you're seeing women's football grow by leaps and bounds, especially over the last 5 or 10 years. Probably in the 90s, 2000, maybe there were 2 or 3 teams that you could say have a shot at winning the World Cup in the women's game. And now it's much greater than that. I would say there's 8 to 10 teams that have a shot, have a shot at it now. And I think it's just because of the growth of the game. I think people don't realize how hard the championship was for us in 2019. We had to beat Spain, France, England, and the Netherlands, arguably the top 4 teams besides us at that particular time, to win it. So the game's grown enormously on the women's side. It's always been that way on the men's side, and we've been trying to play catch up for a while. I think that while we've done well over our time, I think we've yet to become a consistent power Do I think that'll change? Yes, I do. I actually think it will change. I think only if you just have your feet on the ground here in this country, you can see what's happening in soccer in our country, on both sides. I mean, I literally in the early '80s, the only professional soccer that was available at that time when I was coming out of college was indoor pro soccer. You'd never thought outdoor soccer would have caught on in this country back then. And now you look at it on the men's side and you see where it is, and it's got a strong hold. I think MLS is growing tremendously and has been over the last 20 years. So it's an exciting time to be in soccer and for the sport in general. I think our team, if looking at the World Cup, I think our team, a young team. I think my guess is they learned a lot, both on the field and within the coaching staff. And the nice thing is, hopefully, they can use that education in this next World Cup that's going to be in North America, which is exciting as well. So I think there were a lot of things that you could say they did well, but there were things that I think they were a bit naive and had to learn or have to learn from. We really didn't have a bona fide number 9 up top. I think that played out a little bit. Didn't do enough in terms of our penetration and getting good chances and scoring goals. And I think a little bit naive at the back, especially in that last game against the Netherlands, but I think obviously we have some really good young players, got a good infrastructure. And I think the men's game, I think there's a lot to look forward to in the coming years.
As a coach, how are the challenges of coaching international soccer different from coaching college soccer? Now, I know you don't probably have your team as often, and you have them more sporadically, and you have to probably make quick adjustments, and you can't really necessarily build a team like you can build a college team. But what are some of the differences in the coaching on the different types of games?
Well, college soccer, one of the reasons I love college soccer so much is because you're dealing with players and young women who haven't been completely molded yet. There's still a lot of growth in there, not just as a player, but as a student, as a person, and as an athlete. And so for me, it's exciting to be part of that metamorphosis of a player from, their teen years to their young 20s. It's exciting time. I think the challenge is they've already been socialized for almost 18 years, so they have a certain value set. They have a certain way that they've developed, those kinds of things. And I think you have to use that and mold that into a team. And I think that's one of the challenges we have as college coaches. You're getting players potentially from all over the country, develop different ways, and you have to mold them into a team in a very short time. 4 years is a very short time. But the great thing about it is, I think there's, like I said, I think there's a lot of, especially if the player is motivated to learn and grow, there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of room for development in that short time. And I think that's what's really neat about college soccer. You can recruit, so you can look at players that have the intrinsic qualities that maybe you want and espouse as a coach and as a player. And so you're constantly molding a team and growing. The international game is different. A lot of times you're dealing with players that are, they're past their growing stage. They're used to success. They wouldn't be there if they hadn't got success. And their ways that they have done that have proved effective over time. And so you still have to mold them, but you have to mold them with who the player they are at that time. And I think it's a little more of a challenge in that sense, because you don't have them. They're a little older. You don't have them for as long. You might get them once a month if you're lucky, and in a very short time frame where you are not doing a lot of training. You're just getting them prepared from one game and to the next. And so it's a little harder to mold them and to mold them both as a player and within the context of what you're trying to do to prepare them as a team. So they're both different. The international game also has a lot of different rules than college, and a lot of people don't realize how significant that is. But, when you can't sub as much in the international game, that changes the tactics, this changes the strategies that you would employ as a coach as well. And that makes the game much different. And I don't think we recognize that as much at the international stage.
Can you get away with culture things, the culture not fitting together as well internationally as you can in college? International, the players, if they don't really get along, don't like each other, you have a lot of superstars. At least you're not going to be together for a long time. Whereas your college team, you're gonna have lots of time together, lots of trips together, 4 years together. Can you get away with not having the right culture international in a way that you couldn't get away with in the college level?
I don't believe so. I think that no matter what kind of organization or athletic team you run, I think from my experience, culture has to be the first and real important priority for you to be successful. I think oftentimes you see companies, organizations, teams, they don't develop as much as they can because the culture is not right. And so there are different challenges to developing culture, both in college and the international game. But nevertheless, I think culture has to be developed. So, for instance, in the college game, we're dealing, most of the time we have them on a daily basis. And by have them, I mean we're interacting with them on a daily basis through the fall, through the spring, and we're interacting with them pretty much every day. So we can reinforce culture, we can develop culture on a daily basis. With the national teams, it's more like once a month. If you're lucky, it's once a month. So I think culture is still important, but you're going to have to do that maybe in different ways, through emails, through education online, through FaceTime, through Zoom calls, things like this, where you're emphasizing culture as well, but you're doing it maybe in a different way. But I still think it's really important, how you come into camp, how you use the time that you have together in a particular month is really important as well. So it all comes back to culture. I think successful national teams, they need to be able to handle adversity, just like successful college teams. And I think that all comes back to the values that are espoused and the culture that's developed amongst the team and amongst the staff. So I think that's critical.
Yeah. Well, when you're doing your international duty, sometimes you're the assistant coach. Do you still enjoy being an assistant coach after so many years of being a head coach yourself?
I've been asked that a lot. My time with the national team, with the full national team, those 5 years or 6 years or so, that's the first time I've ever been an assistant in my life, except for my wife. My wife coached basketball at a high school in Iowa City when we were just recently married, and I was getting my master's degree. And so it was the first time I'd ever coached girls, and it was the first time that I'd been an assistant coach. But I'll tell you that experience was fantastic, and kind of those are the two times that I've been an assistant coach in my career, really. And I think I wish I'd been an assistant earlier. I think I learned a lot as assistant. I learned what it's like to be an assistant coach, and I think that's helped me become a better head coach. I think just knowing what the assistants go through and how invested they are, and how important they are to the decision making process. So it's people don't realize how pressurized the World Cups are and the Olympics are. It's an enormous amount of pressure. And I think if you have staffs that can handle that and absorb the pressure, I think it can can take a great deal off the head coach. You know, Jill did an amazing job. Jill Ellis, who was the head coach, she did an amazing job of making decisions when she had to, but she also leaned on her staff a lot. And I think that was critical. And she had enough strength of personality and strength of character to be able to do that. You know, I think there's some coaches that I've been around that, you know, it's they're making the decisions and they're the only ones that are making the decisions. And I think any sort of coaching that I've been a part of, it's much better when you're a collective group as opposed to one person. Training sessions automatically get better. Game plans get better. Individual training gets better when you collaborate. And I think that's another part of coaching that I really value. And not that I didn't as a head coach, I've always valued that, but I think even more so as an assistant, I think the collaboration is getting the most out of your players and your staff. And one of the things I really love about coaching is doing it together and in a way that brings out the best in your team.
What are some of the ways that your international duty has helped your college coaching?
Well, I think just working with the caliber of players at the international level has been such a great experience for me personally. I think it's helped raise the standards, I think, of the college, my college team. You know, I think sometimes almost I feel a little bad. You know, I come back from a World Cup or a international duty, and you come back to your college team, and of course it's going to be, the level's going to be a little bit lower because you're dealing with the best in the world. And so sometimes I was too demanding in the sense that here's what we've got to raise our level. Here's what we have to do. But I do think that having higher standards and knowing what the best players in the world are capable of doing and bringing that standard back to the college and adapting it a little bit has helped. You know, being on the cutting edge of new technology and new ways of gathering statistical analysis, physical data, I think has all helped our program grow. I think the development we at Virginia, one of the things that we not only want to win ACC and NCAA championships every year, but we want to develop our players to play at the next level. I think that's part and parcel of what we do here. And so to be able to have the experiences that I had with the Women's World Cup teams, I think I've been able to bring those different elements of development across a physical, a mental, a technical, and a tactical chain has come back and helped us as well. So I think there's been so many other ways that it's helped, but I think the biggest thing is just bringing back different ways of potentially doing things, learning more tactically, what other teams are doing at the international level in different countries, and being able to adjust and adapt that to what we do at Virginia has been very valuable.
Well, you made this amazing career coaching women. I think you've always coached women's soccer. Is that correct, Coach? Or did you coach men at some point?
Yes. Well, I coached when I just at the sort of the latter stage of my professional career, I started coaching some club teams for the boys, with every intention of getting into the men's game. But you know, I didn't know this, but when I went to the University of Iowa was one of the few athletic departments that had a separate women's athletic department and a men's athletic department. They had just kind of merged. But the physical education program that I went into was taught by females. They had a female athletic director, Christine Grant, who was one of the foremost experts in bringing Title IX to the women, to the women's college athletics, and she was my advisor. And so I didn't know it, but I was educated by females and some of the top in the business, and that proved very valuable to me when I got my first job at Dartmouth coaching women. And it's been I couldn't have asked for a better background, upbringing, experience educationally than to be in a program that was pretty much 95% women in my master's program for 2 years, taught by women. And I couldn't ask for a better background going into coaching female athletics.
Well, recently, as you know, I've talked to Dave Nolan at Georgetown, who's coached men as well. I talked to Scott Fry from Messiah, who's taken a women's team and a men's team to the Final Four at some point, and also Scott Weiler from Johns Hopkins, who's coached both. And they all seem to say that there is a slightly different skill set for coaching the women's game. I mean, obviously, leadership is leadership, and the same things are going to make teams successful are going to work both ways. But there could be a slightly different. A coach may do better in one than the other. Do you have an opinion on that, or do you believe it's just a matter of your experience?
Well, I think in certain situations, I think in certain phases of coaching, I think it's about the knowledge of the sport. I think that's critical. Whether you're coaching men or women, I think the knowledge of the sport is important. And then how you communicate that knowledge is particularly important. And I think there are differences in men and women. You have to appreciate those differences. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I'm a better coach. I'm a better teacher, having coached women over my career. I can tell you that right now. And I valued every part of my journey coaching women. They're different, men and women. But I think there are aspects that, to me, there are similar aspects, but you can't say that coaching men and women is the same. Just like you can't say coaching, if I was to coach you or another person, you guys you're individuals, and you have to develop relationship with those individuals, and everybody goes through things differently, processes things differently, or they learn differently. And so I think you have to take the time to get to know your athletes, whether they're men or women, and you have to adjust accordingly as well. So I've always said I treat everybody fairly, but I'm going to treat them differently. And I think it's taking into account the differences that we have as individuals and as people. And I think that's what's important about coaching, especially in the modern day. I think modern coaching now is about the individual. And what I mean by that is, it used to be that a coach was, they were the trainer, they were the strength coach, they were the sports psychologist, they were everything in one. And that's not the case now, especially in college. And we have to, hopefully we're getting much more specific in how we deal with every individual, mentally, physically. Every individual sweats differently. So we have to account for that. Men don't have menstrual cycles. We have to account for that in women. So there are different things that individually, and these all affect performance. And so the more individual we can get, I think the more advantageous to the athletes and the team. It doesn't mean that we're taking away from what the team needs. The team is the team, and you have to develop the team. But how you develop individuals is going to help that team get to where they want to go quicker and more efficiently. And so I'll give you an example. Like if you're strength training, an athlete, I might have one athlete that needs more of a strength focus. And I might have another athlete that needs more of an endurance flexibility focus or a explosive focus. If we can account for those individual differences and what we need to grow in a particular time frame, I think we're going to maximize every individual athlete, and that's going to help the team. But we can't get there if we're just doing a one fits all sort of, here's our strength program and everybody's part of that, And I think that's where modern coaching is going, is we're looking at more of an individualized program for each athlete. And hopefully that's going to maximize each athlete, because we don't have a lot of time. 4 years. You probably remember your time in college. 4 years goes by fast. It's crazy. Yeah. I feel like just when you get them where you want them, they graduate and off they go.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about the modern game, and you do have a bigger apparatus with which you can implement to coach your team. But the game has really changed dramatically in the last 10 years, or maybe even the last 5 years, with the transfer portal, the NIL. You have graduate students playing, and you had one of your leading scorers this year. I believe your leading scorer, Haley Hopkins, was a graduate student. There are changes in the game, and do you enjoy the game the way it is now, or do you sometimes look back on the good old days and say, man, it was more fun back in the early 90s when I was coaching? What do you enjoy more, and what are some of the differences?
Well, I think the game, college athletics, is changing dramatically. I mean, I think if we were to say to introduce NIL back 20 years ago, I mean, we would have got shot down immediately with that.
Let's say UVA, kind of old
yes.
line.
Yes. But I think yes, the game's changed. Yes, college athletics has changed, but I enjoy what I'm doing still. I think it's such a it's when you come out of the womb, you don't have this amazing character right away. It's not inherent in everybody. You have to develop that. And I think one of the great things about coaching a sport is you can help develop that character, and you can help shape and mold. And I think that the other thing about sport that I think is so unusual too, which I love, is technology can help sport, but at the end of the day, it's how you interact as a human and how you do that within the context of a game. That's going to make the biggest difference in performance. And so, the technology in terms of a computer and a smartphone and a lap, they're not out there on the field. And it's still the human factor that's going to make the difference. And I love that. But it's changed. There's no question about it. Recruiting has changed. So it used to be you recruited high school seniors. Now you're recruiting high school athletes. You're recruiting international athletes, transfer athletes. And also in this last 4 or 5 years, your own players who have an extra year because of the COVID. So those are your re-recruiting again, potentially, so they could come back and play for a year. So it's different, and you have to adapt and adjust, but it's still dealing with people, and it's still molding teams. And at the end of the day, I've always enjoyed that. And that's what makes coaching so special for me, is the individual relationships that you develop, and helping players, reach their goals, and, helping them along the way. I always say coaching is a lifetime for me. Coaching is a lifetime guarantee. So when they graduate from our program, I'll be with them the rest of their lives if they want, if they want that. So, and that's what's special about college athletics and athletics in general for me.
Yeah, especially with social media, it's much easier to keep in touch these days. One thing, Coach, you've done, you've coached at 3 fantastic academic institutions as well, and it doesn't seem to be an impediment to performance. I mean, if you look at the teams that have won the NCAA championships and the teams that have done well, and you have your Princetons, you have your UVA, you have Stanford. Many of the best institutions are great in women's soccer. Why is that? Because I know in some sports it's hard to have an athlete that can do everything, that can compete at an extremely high level like UVA, but also compete in the classroom at UVA, which is also quite challenging.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of programs that have won national championships, and you would say maybe they don't have as high academic standards as some other schools in the country, but they deserve as much credit as anybody for being successful. I think I've just really, this is a personal decision for me. I've just value education, and I value the degree that comes with going and playing a college sport. I think that's the primary reason why you should go to college. And so I've been very I've been very fortunate to be at Dartmouth and Stanford and now Virginia. I wasn't the smartest, so to say, in my family. I was probably my I have two older brothers and a younger sister, and they both were way ahead of the academic scale than I was growing up. But I worked hard in school, and I think that the combination. I've always enjoyed the combination of having a real strong academic piece of a school, as well as the competitive program on the athletic side. I think there's very few that can combine the combination of what we have at Virginia here, and I've always valued that. And I think just having this, I think there's so much you can learn from a college experience outside of the soccer field and outside of the classroom as well. I think there is, it depends on the environment that you're in. And I always say, you've got, if you look at your life and, if you look at here's when you were born and here's when you die, college is just a small fraction of that life. And so to me, you got to squeeze as much out of that as you can, as much out of that as you can. If you could do it at a place where that degree is going to mean something all the way through your life, even more, I think all the better. And so I think, the people that are here at Virginia, the education that somebody can get in college in general, this comes from all college. I think everybody should go to college and have that ability to do that, because I think it's a special part in anybody's life. And there's nothing better to me than combining getting a degree and playing a sport. And so at whatever level that is. So I'm hopeful that those opportunities continue, and that we try to get everybody, no matter where they come from, what background, that they have access to a good college education and access to sport as well.
Has college changed as a stepping stone to pro soccer for women? I mean, we have every year our professional soccer league seems to be more viable. It's catching on. Women's soccer overseas is getting more popular. Are you seeing kids that you recruit talk more about playing pro after UVA than years before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's happening now, and I think it just shows the growth of the game worldwide. I mean, obviously, it took us a few iterations of a professional league, but I feel like I think the NWSL is growing, and there seems to be more stability now. We're getting owners that are willing to put a lot of money into having the best clubs in the world here in this country. And I think you have another avenue now to grow as a player and develop as a player. It used to be college soccer was the pinnacle, aside from international soccer, but now you've got a budding pro game. And I think our sport is seeing the same things that are happening on the men's side now, with players leaving early, players foregoing years of eligibility to play at a higher level. And I think that'll continue to happen as the league continues to grow and as soccer continues to gain popularity throughout the country and throughout the world. So I don't see that changing. We had a player, Deanna Ordonez, that graduated last year. She had literally 2 years of eligibility left, so she left early. There's another player, Michelle Cooper from Duke, who's going to leave 2 years early. Mallory Pugh, who's been a real, she's had a breakout year with the national team this year. She left school at UCLA, after her freshman semester, I think her first semester. So Sophia Smith did the same thing at Stanford. Olivia Moultrie didn't even go to college. Lindsey Horan didn't go to college. So I think this is it's happening more, and I think it'll continue to happen more as players assess, their best options to grow and what their goals are down the road. So, but I think college is still You look at around the country in the women's game, and I would argue the men's game too. If you look at how many players on the men's national team played college, I think you'd be surprised to see that there's a lot of college experience in there. Certainly for the women, that's the case, and not only our women, but countries throughout the world have college ties. Canada has most of their players went to college in the U.S. Mexico as well. Any of the Haiti has got a lot of college-based players. So you can see it around the world now, and college has always been a good venue for developing players, and I think it'll continue to be. It just depends on what the individual players now want.
One of your ex-players I had, and I'm sure a good friend, who had an incredible career path is Alex Singer, who I interviewed several months ago. I had met her at a futsal game, and she actually went overseas and played, and then she came back. And now she's general manager of the Houston Dash. So after I talked to her, I followed the team really closely. They have a really exciting player from England that came over, one of the best, hottest strikers in the league. And I've really enjoyed following Alex's career. What an amazing career arc she's had.
Yeah, and I think she's one that I would tell you, she came from a good club system in New York. She was somebody that I remember recruiting Alex and saying, if you want to play at the next level, I think your best spot is going to be to move back and play as an outside back, not as her traditional role of being a forward or a wide midfielder. And so we converted her right away. And she grew by leaps and bounds, mostly due to her, her motivation and her willingness and her determination. And she had a great career, and she went over to Germany and played there for 3 years at a very high level, came back here and played for the Washington team, then went back and got her education and started in marketing and sport management, and worked for Octagon as an agent before taking the GM job. So I think her path is one that you'll see more and more often in the women's game. You're going to have exceptional women leaders like Alex come back and give back to the game. We have another player that's in the front office at Gotham, Christina Irandano, who's in marketing there and developing partnerships with sponsors and things like that. So I think the more and more we can get players that have that have played the game, understand the game, think the game, in positions of power, I think moving forward, I think it's only going to solidify the game for the future. So we're really proud of Alex. That's for sure, Julian.
Oh yeah, she's awesome. So, well, also, Coach, one thing that's interesting about college soccer is the coaches, and I've talked to a lot of them. It's been great. They stay in these jobs for a very long time. A lot of them stay at the same school for a whole career, more than 20, 25 years. So, but it really creates some great rivalries. Like Anson Dorn from UNC has been there for many years. Is he still there? I believe he's still there, right? Yeah. So what is it like coaching against the same coach? It doesn't happen anywhere else. And most of the soccer, coaches get fired, they leave. I mean, college soccer is one of these games where coaches stay a very long time, and you have a lot of opportunities to play against the same coach year after year.
Yeah, I think that's what makes our sport interesting and exciting, especially the different conferences that we have. It's a little bit, when I first came to the ACC back in 2000, it is a much different looking ACC than it is now. And so the rivalries, there's been some unique rivalries that have stayed, but we've also lost some teams, that were strong rivalries for years and years and years. I think in modern college athletics, it's probably going to change again. I think one of the things that we all have to try to do, but it's hard because, that's the way college athletics is. In order to keep your job, you have to be successful, you have to do well, but it's how can we grow the game, and how can we as coaches in our own conferences and our own sport grow the game in this country for the betterment of everyone. It's hard sometimes. You get caught up in your own college world and what's best for the University of Virginia, or what's best for the University of whoever. And it's harder to look at things more, holistically. And I think if we can do that, I think we're more apt to grow the game in a way that we all want, and that can help future players get more opportunities and better opportunities down the road. So I think we're one of the nice things is, that we know each other quite well, so we're in a better position to do that. And some sports I think are better than others at it, but I think in general we have to do that throughout. And I'm glad we have some great colleagues in our conference, and we have some amazing coaches in the women's game, that I think we all can. And I think the sport, because of that, has grown an awful lot, especially on the women's side. Mm-hmm. But I think soccer in general has grown, and our hope is that it continues to grow in the right ways, and that offer really good experiences and really good opportunities for young girls coming up. I would hate to think that, I had a dream of playing college soccer. I had a dream of playing professionally. It might not have been, it eventually was in soccer, but, baseball, whether it was baseball or basketball, things like that, I think these dreams, hopefully you can keep these dreams alive in young kids, because even if they don't get it, which a lot of them don't, it can help them grow in different ways that leads to becoming positive influences in society. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, how did a boy from Detroit back in I guess probably late 70s or so, in the land of the Detroit Lions, the Detroit Pistons, the Tigers, the Red Wings, how in the world did that boy get interested in soccer? Of all, because there was a pro team. We had the Diplomats here. I'm not even sure you had a pro team in Detroit. So how did you first get into soccer?
Well, my background, I was a son of an Air Force veteran. My father couldn't fly, though his eyes weren't good enough, and so, but I was born on an Air Force base in Mississippi, and so we moved quite a bit. We moved for his education, and eventually, in my very early years, we lived in Switzerland. He was part of, he worked for the World Health Organization. So I got into soccer at a very young age, or football then, in Switzerland. And I enjoyed it at the time. And when I came back to the US, and my father moved to Detroit because of the car factories and the car plants. He was doing a lot of air quality emissions testing on those. I inevitably came back to the game because somebody, his name was Mickey Price. I remember he was excited about soccer. He had a background in soccer. And so he kind of rekindled my enthusiasm for soccer, even though at that time, I was more into baseball and basketball. I was into all different sports. I loved sports growing up. I played all the different sports, but it wasn't until I got to high school, and my high school, fortunately, was one of 16 high schools in the state of Michigan that offered soccer as a sport. So there were only 16 in the state of Michigan, and I was lucky enough to go to one that offered it. And so I played it in high school. Club soccer wasn't what it is now, but it just started to come out as I left high school, and so I got involved in a league in Canada where I was playing with 35, 30-year-old men who, I was 16, 17 years old at the time. So that was a real education for me. And most of Windsor, Canada was immigrants. So they worked in the factories and they played soccer on the weekends. And you had you had your Croatians, you had your Italians, you had your Portuguese, you had your Scots, you had different ethnic backgrounds that had teams. And that's where I learned to play and grow my game. And then I eventually went to Michigan State to play soccer. And then I played 4 years of indoor professional soccer before deciding that coaching was really what I wanted to do. So I think soccer in this country started on both coasts and came inland. So definitely the Midwest was not the hotbed of soccer at the time. It is now, but I think it's grown by leaps and bounds. But I was fortunate enough where my background helped, and my high school soccer helped me kind of keep the flame going with playing the sport. Now our high school team did not do well. I always say that. Everybody asks, well, what should you play high school soccer or not? But I learned a lot in my high school soccer about losing, because we only won one game. We averaged one win a year in 4 years, but I learned how to compete, and I learned how to lose gracefully, but also competitively. So I learned how to be persistent, I guess, as an athlete when that happens.
Just as an aside, do you like when your women play high school soccer? Because obviously their club teams where they get most of their experience, most of their exposure. But my kids go to Yorktown, and we have a fantastic high school team. They won the state last year, and the girls, they have a great time playing together. How do you feel about your players playing high school?
I think they should do what they want to do. I think that if I was a high school athlete today, would I play high school soccer? I don't know. The whole environment's different than it was for me. I can just say that, while I might not have grown technically or tactically as a player, I grew as a leader and I grew as a competitor. And I would never take those 4 years away, as hard as that was, because you can do the math. We won one game every year. So we were 1-16 or 1-18 every single year. And so that was difficult. But I think one of the main reasons I became a professional athlete is because of my high school soccer experience. It gave me a mentality, stick-to-itiveness, never say die attitude that I still take with me today, and I still have with me. And so I think it depends. Every situation's a little different, and you have to analyze that and say, hey, if I could play on this club team year round and this is going to develop me and I love the game, maybe that's what I do, as opposed to playing high school soccer. But I think the one thing I do advocate playing more than one sport growing up. I think that helped me, and I think that can help any athlete become better at what they decide to focus on down the road. But some of the best athletes I've ever been around are athletes that have played multiple sports and are multiple sport athletes.
Yeah, me as well. And Coach, with only 16 teams playing high school soccer, you only have to win 2 games to get to the Final Four there. So that actually sounds pretty cool.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we never made the playoffs any year, Julian.
Who was your coach at Michigan State?
My coach at Michigan State was a guy by the name of Joe Baum. And Joe won a national championship at Michigan State in the late 60s. And he really inspired me. He took a chance on me. I was not the finished product. Coming out of high school, I had a lot to learn and I had a lot to improve on soccer wise. But when I got to college, I fully devoted myself to it, to the sport, and I grew enormously over those 4 years. And I think Joe just believed in me, and he showed me the power of belief. What you can do if you believe in somebody and you inspire them and you push them along. He's not coaching anymore, but I always reflect on my 4 years at Michigan State as being some of the best years of my life, and some of the ones that I think he helped me get to where I wanted to go. And I think he'll have a real valuable place in my heart the rest of my life. You remember people like that. And I'm very grateful that our paths crossed. I hope I can inspire my players the same way he did me. Let's put it that way. I hope I can inspire my players the same way he did me.
Do you think he would have been successful in today's game and also today's college environment?
Coach Baum?
Yes, Coach Baum. Mm-hmm.
I think, I think he would. I think he was very good at establishing relationships, developing cultures, competing. And he was always, one thing I admired about him, he was always willing to grow and learn. And I think, you have to have that. The game's changing so fast that you have to educate yourself and you have to learn and you have to want to learn. And I think he was that way. So yes, I think he would be. I think he could. I think he could effectively coach through the years, and he showed that he stayed in the game for 30, almost 35 years. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Well, you're the leading scorer. You were captain of the team. You were a regional All-American. So you had a great career. Was there any path to playing in Europe? I know you mentioned offline that there was only an indoor league at that time. I think the NASL had folded by that time. So did you consider trying to go back to Switzerland or whatever and trying to play pro?
No, I don't think so. I think, that it was so difficult back then because the technology isn't what it is today. The social media, we've become a much closer world, by everything that's going on. And I think I love Europe and I love all the travels over the last 20 years that I've had coaching have opened up my eyes to a much more, I want to learn more about the global game. I love the global game and I love traveling now. But back then it wasn't, you didn't think about it that much, and I really didn't have aspirations at the time other than to play professional soccer in this country. And it didn't really have the same feel like it does now. I mean, I remember as late as 1990, Julian, you could not get a game on television. You could not find soccer on television in 1990. I remember we had to go over to a friend's house who had satellite TV to watch the 90 World Cup in Italy. And you just couldn't do that. Now you get games every day. Every day you can see a game. You can see women's games. You can see men's games. You could see from all different countries. It just wasn't that way back then. And so for me, there was an aspiration to play and excel. But I think once I did that, once I played for 4 years, I was ready to do something different. I was ready to coach. I really had gotten the coaching bug. And my wife and I, we got married and we were just ready to explore the world together and get after it. And that's what we've been doing. Yeah. So,
well, when you first got the head job at Dartmouth, when you first become a coach, how do you decide what kind of coach you want to be and how you're going to coach? My guess is you probably model Coach Baum and the coaches that have had success that have been in your life previous.
Well, I think, you have to have I had a philosophy of how I wanted to coach, the values that I wanted to instill. I was always a strong proponent of hard work, putting in the time, being unselfish, having it be about the team, giving up some of the personal for the or the individual for the team. I think there was many times I could have gone into the individual sport way, but I always gravitated towards the team because I loved playing with the team and sharing the successes and the failures you have as a player with others. It was it's still to this day, the best part about coaching is you're doing it together and you can share in the successes and the failures with one another. And I think there's a beauty in that. But so I think you have, as a coach, you have your philosophy that it takes into account all the experiences that you've had intrinsically, what kind of players you want to develop, what kind of attitudes you want to have, the culture that you want to have. I think where I was still growing was, how did I want to play as technically, or how did I want to play tactically? What was my game model? What were the principles that I wanted to have? And I think you always, as I've gotten older, you always have to look at the players that you have and mold that to the players that you have in terms of a system. But I think a style of play, I think I've had the same style of play over the years at any team, whether it's Dartmouth, Stanford, or Virginia, or even with the national teams that I've coached. But I think I became involved with a coach at Dartmouth who helped me a lot. I feel like my mentor there was Bobby Clark. He was a men's coach there at Dartmouth. I know you had Brian Weiss on originally, and Brian played. Brian was a player when I was a coach at Dartmouth, so we both learned from Bobby together. And Bobby was a huge mentor for me in terms of understanding the game better at a tactical level, learning what it's like to instill good attacking principles and good defensive principles in the team. So that 5 years when I was at Dartmouth, I think I was able to really develop my my soccer model, so to speak. I had my kind of player model and the team model, but I developed my soccer model there, and I worked with some amazing players there and some amazing coaches. And I think I've cultivated that in every stop along the way. And I think though each of those transitions has been very valuable to me as well. I think that I think the transition going from being a club coach to a college coach at Dartmouth was invaluable to me. The transition from going to Dartmouth to Stanford and the pressure that had on me, because you're dealing much more high profile program. I think that helped me grow, and then certainly changing and coming to Virginia. But all of those transitions have been extremely valuable to me. And I think the other thing about coaching too is the failures. I've failed way more than I've succeeded as a coach, but I think those are still success stories. You learn a lot, even more so from the failures. And we've been awful close. We've lost in championships. We've lost in PK shootouts. I've lost a lot of games where, we were right there, but I think those have helped in the successes, and any success that I've had. I think those failures have been instrumental in teaching me and teaching our teams and helping ensure success down the road. So,
of course, I'm a basketball guy, and in basketball, we don't care about if we play attractively or not. Basketball is a very practical game, and there are fads. I mean, the game changes. Like right now, the game is really spread out. It's kind of positionless, and you shoot a lot of threes, and you slash to the hole, and you dunk a lot. But in soccer, there are a lot of coaches and a lot of people, like they want to play attractive soccer. You want to do things the right way. Is that ever a notion that you worry about? Is how you play and that you play attractive soccer?
I think, I think a sport, every sport has an art to it. And I think I like appealing to the art of that sport. And our sport is, we play on one of the largest fields with the most players. There isn't any net separating us. And so there's this interactiveness on the field between players that I just love. And I think I try to enhance that. I think that's what is special about our sport. So the linking that goes on in an unstructured way, we don't have plays that we go over except for set plays, but for the most part, ours is a very unstructured game. We have principles, but we're not bringing it in. We're going to have a huddle. Here's the play we're calling, then we do the play. That has to happen on the field, instinctively, creatively, with obviously some training and things like that. But that part of it I really enjoy. And so I think it is trying to bring out the art in the sport that I find fun and enjoyable, and try to make it attractive to people that come to watch. So I think there's part of that there's a part of that. But the other part of it for me in particular is, how can we develop, what we try to do, again, I said it, develop players. Well, what does it take to play at the next level? And how will that affect the way we play? I think we could be very successful because of the athletes that we have here at Virginia, to play very direct and to be very efficient at what we do, and to be very methodical, and just forget the art. We're just going to get the ball in the back of the net. That's the only thing we care about. But to be successful at the next level, you have to, there's got to be skills that are involved, and there's got to be thinking that's involved. The modern game demands that. It's a much smaller game, meaning there's not as much space. It's very tight. It's very compact. You have to manage those tight spaces, and you have to understand where those spaces are in the game so you can exploit them. And that takes a lot of skill, and that takes a lot of thought. And so I think we owe it to our players to teach in that way, and to make sure they're making decisions out of that context, you know. And I think we just can't be a team. Hey, just because we compete hard is not going to ensure that we're successful in the modern game. That's just you can't do it. You have to play well, and you have to perform well, and you have to exploit spaces in the game and finish your chances in a very efficient way, in a very productive way, because you're not going to get a lot of them in the modern game. And so how can you do that? And so it takes a lot more. I think there's a lot more that goes into that, but it's that ability to bring the art and the development piece together to develop a style that will help your players grow. And I think that's where kind of those are everything that's molded me as a coach has got me to that. That's the kind of soup I'm working on, put a lot of those ingredients in the pot there, and hopefully it comes out on the field.
Yeah. Well, you've had incredible success playing this attractive soccer that you talked about. And so, this year I got a chance to watch you play quite a few times on the internet. And I love the way your teams almost seem to dance down the wings. A lot of times it's hard to get down the wings, but you're always able to get to the wing and get the low cross in. Can we talk about your team this year? I know you had Haley Hopkins, who had 14 goals and 5 assists. And you had a freshman who had 4 goals and 12 assists. But you also had OACC Leah Godfrey, 8 goals, 5 assists. Alexa Spanstra, hope I'm saying that right, 8 goals, yep. 5 assists. Who's I think a 5th-year player. So you had a lot of firepower. You did play a really attractive game. Started out this season on fire. Talk a little bit about the 22 season.
Well, I think overall when you look back, I mean, every year we set out to win an ACC championship and an NCAA championship. Those are our on-field goals. And so if you look at it and you measure it from that, we didn't do that. We competed very hard, but we didn't win an ACC championship, and we didn't win an NCAA championship. But I think there's much more to it than that. I thought we put out a good product game in and game out. I think we're going to have some players that I think will be drafted in a week or two, which is something that we take great pride in. And I think we had some really good moments during the season. So we accomplished a lot. We didn't accomplish everything, but I think we accomplished a lot. I think our team, we advanced to the quarterfinals. I thought we represented ourselves really well in that game against UCLA, who eventually won the national championship. I felt we put ourselves in a really good position to win, but it didn't go our way that particular day. So that was tough. It was really hard not getting a result in that game, because I thought we did enough to get a result. But full credit to UCLA for pulling that out in overtime. But I think I think overall we did some really good things during the season. I think our players, we got better. I think that's another measure of our success, is we got better as the season progressed. We had a couple moments during the season where we just weren't making the plays, and that led to a couple draws. And I think that impacted our ACC run a little bit. But I think overall, there was a lot to be proud of. And I think our players, I think they grew together. We had a good group. I think the only disappointment is obviously you felt like you could have, every team feels like they could have, and maybe only one team is going to be happy at the end of the year, because you feel like, you could have done it. But I think we definitely felt like we were in the mix there, but really proud of the team. We've got some great kids on the team. They love one another. They're good students. We do well academically, and probably the most proud I am of them this year is we had a terrible tragedy on grounds that affected not just our football program, but our whole Virginia community, in the death of our 3 football players. And so that hit us, but I thought our players really, they made a great account of themselves. I think they worked very hard to honor the lives of Devin, Deshaun, and Lavelle. And I think they did a remarkable job of that. They won't be forgotten. And I think, like I said, we hit some adversity in many different ways during the season, but I think our team responded really well to that adversity, and that's another measure of success.
That week you're talking about, it was a very tough week, and you were in the midst of the NCAA tournament. Was it a kind of a welcome release that you had soccer and you had these big games? You were able to go up to Penn State and win both games, or was it one of those things where it was really hard to get the team to practice?
Well, I think, in normal circumstances, what we might have done is we might have, this happened on a Monday, and we knew that we were scheduled to play Xavier at Penn State on Friday. And so if it was one game and it wasn't an NCAA tournament game, I think for sure we would have tried to get the game postponed. But we had to make a decision pretty quickly on Tuesday. And so we came together, and our coaching staff got together with the team and our sports psychologist, and we said, look, this is not one person's decision here. We all have to make the decision that this is something we want to do. And so I actually left it up to them. We as a coaching staff, we left the room, and they talked amongst themselves, and I think they came quickly to the conclusion that they wanted to play in honor of the players that had passed. And I think one of our players said it best. They said, Lavelle would have wanted us to play this game. He would have been there. He would have wanted us to play this game. And I think that resonated with a lot of our players. As hard as it was, as emotional as that whole week was, I think leaving on Wednesday and going to State College, I think was a healthy distraction for our team. And even though they were still hurting, because our team was very close, that we had players that were very close to those individuals. And so that was very difficult for our team as a whole, and our department as a whole, and our community as a whole. But it hit our team more so than I think a lot of others, just because there were a lot of players that knew those individuals as friends, really good friends. And so I think that's what happens when you go through a COVID year in a same dorm room with everybody. You get close, and I think that's what happened. So it was difficult. It still is difficult. Time is the best healer, but I think us going and playing the second and third rounds out of Charlottesville was, like I said, a healthy distraction for our team.
Yeah, I caught one of the games, and they played so great too, Coach. So, well, look, Coach. Last question. This has been great. I really appreciate you giving me so much time. What are our prospects for the fall 2023 season? Are you excited about the team we'll have next year?
Yes, I am. I think we have a good mix of every year. Every year we lose good players, good people, good students, and this. I think that's going to be the case this year. We lose some really good players and just even better people and good leaders. But I do feel strongly about the team that we have coming back. We have a good mix of old and new. We have a good freshman first year class coming in, and it's exciting. I think one of the great things about spring in our sport is you have a chance to work with them and develop them without sort of any pressure of travel and games. We have 5 games, obviously, but it's a little different. It's not the same time demands that you have in the fall. And so you can put more into developing individuals and developing your team. So we're looking forward to that. And just anxious to get back together again. So
yeah. Yeah. Well, again, Coach, I really appreciate you doing this. Great to meet you. You know, I'm in Charlottesville a lot. I'd love to meet you face to face one time if it's ever possible. I know you're a busy guy, but really appreciate you taking time to talk to me. I love talking soccer and I love talking about UVA. And I mean, you've accomplished so much. Again, one of the most accomplished figures in American soccer. So I've really enjoyed this.
I appreciate that, Julian. It was good to be on, and I hope happy holidays to everybody. So one thing I always say, we may not have the same ethnicity, culture, those kinds of things, but we have the same blood, and so we've got to come together in that spirit. So I hope that happens for everybody in 2023. So thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, that's a great way to end it, Coach. And I hope the same. And again, Happy New Year, and yeah, thanks again. And very nice to meet you.
Thank you, Julian. Appreciate it.